Hello and welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, the channel for film reviews, discussions and everything in between. I'm Chris Garner, joined once again with my co-host George Aldridge, and today, for a little side video for the channel, we're going to be reviewing all 4 of the previous Mission Impossible movies. We wanted to get this up because there wasn't really a place for it in our main show this week. Obviously we did Inside Out, and then we've got our film club show this week of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, but we wanted to get a review up for these in anticipation for Rogue Nation, which will be our main show next week. So yeah, we're just going to be working our way through all 4 of the movies. We're going to kick off with the first one, Mission Impossible, which was released in 1996, directed by Brian De Palma. I think we just may as well get into it straight away with the main character, Ethan Hunt, played obviously by Tom Cruise. If you want to go into the plot a bit on this one, George, and then we'll kind of go into his course as a character throughout this film and the rest of them.
Yeah, with this one, Tom Cruise... Oh, sorry, that's the first mistake. Ethan Hunt is on a part of a Spec Ops mission. John Voight's his kind of leader. They're literally just doing a standard mission. It's working, then boom, it kind of goes tip-top, and his whole crew die, except him, and he asks for support, and they kind of say, well, we know you're the mole because you're the one that survived. So his industry, or IMF, which is the Impossible Mission Force, I think that's the name of his organisation he works for, which is very creative indeed. They kind of turn on him, so he's left on his own to sort out all the problems, and he has to go off the rails, find people that have been kicked out of the IMF to help him get through the mission.
Yeah, and I guess we should have opened with this really, but I'm completely new to this series. Like, I knew that Rogue Nation was coming out, I saw the trailers for it, thought it looked really fun, but I never followed the series. There were always a series of films I meant to watch, just never got around to it, but I'm glad we did this because it gave me a chance to watch them out. And you're right, with this first scene when all of his team gets picked off, it throws you straight into the action and sort of what the stakes are, what the tone of this world's going to be like. And I think this one, probably out of all 4 of them, is the most sort of espionage-y and more spy-like. Obviously this was following the TV show which came out. I'm not sure which decade it came out, but I think it came out way before this film did. This was like a modern take on it. And I really like the team aspect at the start because that's always fun with these spy things. And you're a Bond fan as well, and I don't know if you ever picked up on this or if you ever thought this or saw them as 2 separate things. Do you ever think there was that kind of rivalry between the 2 film properties? Like, these would have come out, I would assume, around the sort of Brosnan era of Bond. So I don't know if they're very similar in that way. Did you always think that some people are on Team Mission Impossible or Team Bond, or did you always see the 2 as completely separate?
Yeah, the Bond comparison, I don't really know. Like, I'm the same with you. I saw the 4th one when that came out because that was a big thing. Never saw the first 3, and I eventually wanted to see him, and I finally got around to it. It's one of them where I can understand where the comparisons come from with sort of Bond and this, but I think with Bond it's on a more of a wavelength for the Bourne films, whereas Mission Impossible I kind of see it as its own thing. Although it's like sort of spy films, I don't really see it as that. I kind of see them as these Tom Cruise films, to say the minimum. It's hard to categorise it because it has got spy, but I don't think it's enough of a spy film.
Yeah, I think there is a noticeable difference there, and obviously Bond's been going on long before that, so that's like had its established history. This seems, I don't want to say a lot more modern because obviously Bond got a lot more modern, but I think there is that noticeable difference there. And obviously Cruise's star power, I mean, he was massive in the 80s. He's still big now. You look at him now with all the action films he brings out, he's still massively popular. So I always think there was that difference there, but I didn't know, because you see I wasn't a Bond fan. I didn't know if that comparison was always there. But yeah, with this, it was an interesting one. I mean, I've gone on record before and said, like, the spy genre isn't a genre I'm all that into. I'm much more into, like, action. But with this one, I found that with this franchise, I got into it a lot more than I did with, like, the Bond films. Obviously, you like Bond more than these, I'm guessing. But, I don't know, there was something about this where I tolerate these more. Like, I've seen the Bourne films as well. Never got really that into those either. But maybe it was with this one, like the whole team mechanic of it, which I really, really enjoyed, and that's throughout all 4 of them.
Yeah, I think this is the same. I think Bond I kind of see as the essence of the spy, whereas with these, I mean, I love seeing Tom Cruise do action films, stuff like that. I like the fact he's got his franchise where he calls the shots he decides to. So I like it in that perspective, but Bourne as well. I was never really big on Bourne. I don't really like it. I don't like the comparisons between that and
Mm.
Bond because I don't think Bourne's anything similar. I genuinely think he's an incredibly boring character, but in this, it's just so much fun. It's kind of like the 60s. Now the comparisons I'm thinking of, it is literally 60s Bond films now,
Mm.
but not done so dramatically where you've got this one stunt and it's like jaw dropping. You see that in the later films and in the first one, and that's what you were getting at the time of the Bond films. You had the whole training, the old ones, but it's one of them as a franchise. I really enjoy it, and I like the directions it's going in, and it differs because it's easy to make the comparisons, but as I love the team stuff. I do like the team dynamic. Although Cruise is the MVP, you need that team essence, and it kind of works with this over the other spy films and stuff.
Yeah, and if we're going to get into the team a bit with this one, Ving Rhames in this is probably my favourite character out the entire franchise. It's always great when he crops up. And I saw the first one instantly and I was like, that's Marcellus Wallace from Pulp Fiction. And I instantly liked his character. He looks exactly like Marcellus Wallace from that movie. And also Jean Reno, who's just one of my favourite actors of all time. If you've seen the Professional, is fantastic in that movie, and the Da Vinci Code as well. I just think he's great. Um, and then I guess from that, I don't really know how much we can talk about the first one, really. If we can talk about favourite scenes, positives and negatives, I think probably most people will say that their favourite scene is the ceiling drop. I mean, it's classic, it's been parodied in loads of stuff. Um, it's when the soundtrack cuts out and it's genuinely like on the edge of your seat, nail biting stuff. All the sound cuts out, and it's just Tom Cruise dropping, and there's some kind of temperature control in the room where if it hits a different Fahrenheit, then all the alarms are going to go off. They're going to be busted. They have to get through like a laser grid as well. John Reno's lowering him down with a cable, and it's just perfect. Like how tense that scene is, and when someone comes back into the room and he has to be pulled up just out of eyesight. That's probably my favourite scene of the entire film.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly obvious, but the right choice for that. It's just the whole thing. It's the lack of the soundtrack, and it's when they build up the that moment where they go for it. You cannot touch the floor, and it's just when the sweat comes, everyone can sense it, and he kind of gets with his hand, but he's already at the bottom, and it's so tense. You're on the edge of the seat, and then you go up to the top. There's the rat crawling around. He's getting dropped and dropped, and it was so great. And I kind of liked it. Like it's so easy to have a plot dynamic. Well, yeah, the worker that's meant there, he's ill.
Yeah.
It's an easy choice, but it works. And it works well when you see him go into the door and you think, oh shit, Tom Cruise is gone. But then no, what? He turned around, he's sick again. And there's these moments where it keeps building, building, and I think it does it really well. And I really enjoyed it because obviously I've seen the parody clip
Yeah.
more than I've seen the actual moment, but it was so good to see it. And I quite like the fact it's a small scale because it's the beginning of the evolution of the Tom Cruise stunts we'll start to
And
see.
each one, and we'll get into each one in particular, each one has a sort of central action piece to the movie. Four especially has that. Um, but with this scene from one, I can totally sympathise with John Reno in that bit because I have a massive phobia of rats, and I would have done exactly the same thing in his situation if I was in that vent lowering the rope. But yeah, that scene's great, and it's interesting when you watch it now. Obviously, I always knew that this scene was in Mission Impossible, even though I hadn't seen the film. But watching parodies and other films that are similar to it first, like there's a scene in Shrek 2 which parodies this directly with Pinocchio and the Gingerbread Man when they're busting Shrek and Donkey and Puss in Boots out the prison cell. So I'd kind of seen this scene in that sense before, even though I knew it was from Mission Impossible. And then even with like Sam Raimi's original Spider-Man film, where I think Norman Osborn walks into the room, Peter Parker's on the ceiling, and a drop of blood falls from his hand, and it really reminded me, or rather, this reminded me of that when the bead of sweat's coming down his head, and he's got to catch it before it hits the ground.
Yeah, I didn't really think of the Spider-Man dynamic, but it kind of makes sense now I've seen it. But I just like the way they could get it wrong and they could have it cliched and all of that, but well, sorry, it's incredibly cliched, but the way the final outcome is, I think it's perfect. And I do like the fact that parodies because although it's almost 20 years old, this film, you'll see it crop up once a year. Someone's done a joke of it. I think there's a really funny Channel 4 show called like the Kevin Bishop Show or something where they parodied Tom Cruise in an episode, and It's kind of like him with Nicole
Mm.
Kidman, and he was like he was like put on the rope down to the bed and stuff like that. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's almost like a moment of like pop culture. This is.
yeah, and well, after that, if I'm gonna get into a couple of negatives now, because that scene's so good and it plays really well into the whole spy and espionage tone that the film had set before it. I do think when it gets to the final climax, how it gets very ridiculous. That's what I'll say for the ending, with the whole train and the helicopter thing. It's very CGI heavy. Obviously, this was the late 90s, so CG had just come in sort of earlier in the year with Jurassic Park and other films like that, and it was being much more widely used. And that scene, the effects haven't aged particularly well. It's still okay, but it does get really, really over the top, and we'll get into that more with the second one. But I just don't think that that action set piece fits the tone of what came before in the film.
No, it kind of felt it was a kind of cool setup. They were going in and out. I think it's just a bit too much when it goes under the tunnel and there's a helicopter going
Yeah,
under a tunnel, and I think it felt like a bit too much. And they were trying to do this and that. I think if they'd have kept it smart and if the extraction had just gone wrong, that could have worked in itself. But it's incredibly hard to top what they did before. But also, they kind of go for that classic. This is the big finale. I don't think it works compared to the the small scale success used
yeah,
before.
and sort of the last point I'll bring up is just about the music. We'll hit the soundtracks for each one as well. This one was done by Danny Elfman. Obviously, he reuses the classic Mission Impossible theme, which is always great when that plays in the film. Other than that, I think the soundtrack's just kind of it's serviceable. It's sort of like your typical spy stuff which you want, but there's nothing stand out really. Obviously, the sort of fist punching moment when the Mission Impossible theme kicks in, when they pull off like an awesome stunt or job in the film, that theme will kick in, and then you're kind of more aware of the soundtrack. But I haven't got many comments on this soundtrack, to be honest. It's very noticeable. It's very noticeably Danny Elfman's soundtrack. He uses a lot of similar cues to some of his other stuff. Like the background noise is very similar to his. But that's really all I can say about the music for this film, really.
Yeah, I think it's one of them where you get the theme, but it's for a few of them. I didn't really notice anything else. It just felt like a standard soundtrack. There's nothing special about it. But I don't mind it. I mean, they get better as they go
Yeah,
along.
should we
But
go into
it's
should we
one of
go
them.
into like overall thoughts just on the first one then before we move on to two? If you want to kick off first.
Yeah, I'd say it's a good franchise
Mhm.
opener. It reimburses the Tom Cruise status, and it starts to show the potential that this spy series has got.
Yeah, I'll kind of say the same thing as well. I think when you watch them all back to back, like over a few days, which is what I did before we did this review, I think the effects of it are lessened somewhat. Obviously, it got more grander and they could do a lot more stuff with it. But I think out of all of them, this is the most sort of classic spy espionage type one out of them all. Um, but yeah, it's a good opener, but obviously it's not the strongest one of the series. But it's fine. It's perfectly serviceable. It holds up pretty well, I think. It's dated in some bits, especially the end action set piece, but it's still a solid sort of action spy thriller film. And then we'll move on to Mission Impossible 2, which is, I'm going to say it right from the off, Mission Impossible 2 is my favourite of the four Mission Impossible films. I know we greatly differ in opinion on this one. This one came out in 2000, sorry, directed by John Woo, and oh my god, is it definitely a John Woo movie. Tom Cruise is obviously back, Ethan Hunt, but it's very difficult to kind of give any insight into the progression of his character in this one. Three definitely ramps that up, and we'll get into that in a bit, but with this one, it's sort of you could just rename this film. This doesn't need to be called Mission Impossible 2. You could slap any title on this, Tom Cruise in whatever. This is just a classic like Tom Cruise 90s action. Well, actually, it's not 90s, is it? 90s was just over. Classic action movie. This could have been anything. You kick us off with this because I know you've got some strong opinions on this one.
Yeah, I'm in the complete opposite. I think this is the worst Mission
Yeah.
Impossible film. I dislike it severely. I would like it. I think as soon as I saw it, I texted you,
Yeah.
didn't I? I think I was just before I was going to bed. I was like, if this was an action film, Tom Cruise, I'd probably be alright about it. But I just found it very boring, and it's not really cliched because it's a new franchise. But in the first one, we'll go into a lot more in the third one again. But you kind of get these masks that she uses as a plot device in the first one. But in this one, they're kind of like, this guy's wearing a mask, this guy is this guy is this guy is this guy is that guy, blah blah blah. I mean, I'll sum up. In the opening scene, there's an aeroplane heist, which was very cool. I will say that was very Mission Impossible-esque. But for some reason, the guy has a mask of Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
And sorry, Ethan Hunt, and he's literally. You think, oh look, it's Tom Cruise, and he does bad things. You're like, oh, it was a mask. Why the hell have you got a mask of Tom Cruise for?
Yeah.
It was irrelevant.
But we kind of see that more with 3, which I'm glad they did. They sort of show how they create the masks, stuff like that. It's like a load of cameras, isn't it? They snapshot the entire head and then graph one from there. But I'll completely agree with that point on the masks, and I said that to you after I watched it as well. There's a scene where a guy is wearing 2 masks, one on top of the other. And when it gets to that stage, it's just like, okay. Like, the range of motion in these things, and you've got 2 on. Like, when they whip them off, they're literally like a rubber Halloween mask. It's absolutely ridiculous, but I think why I like this movie so much is actually down to you, because when you'd watched it, you kind of warned me and said that it's a crap Mission Impossible film, it's just an action movie. So right there, my expectations were set for the film, and I went into it going, okay, I'm just going into this as an action movie. And for what it is, it's probably one of my favourite action movies I've seen in a long, long time, and I'm definitely glad I saw this movie. So I will parentheses my comment saying that this is my favourite Mission Impossible film. If you're a die-hard fan of the series and you love the whole spy aspect of it, I completely understand why you would hate this movie or significantly dislike it compared to the other ones. This does away with all that. This is just John Woo going, you know what? I've got the right to make a Mission Impossible film. I'm just going to do what I do best and do a kick-ass action movie. And that's what he does. And if that's all you're in it for, and I said at the start with the first one, I'm much more into action movies than I am spy ones. So I think that's why I gravitated to this one more so than the other ones. But I do completely understand problems that people would have with this. I think I love, like, I'm a big fan of like 80s action movies, and all of those are completely over the top, ridiculous, one-liners left, right and centre, super cheesy, but I love them for that. And to me this was like the equivalent of that in 2000, so I think that's why I liked it so much.
I think with this, I'm gonna. The only reason Tom Cruise is doing it is to get the missus, which is the most obvious like love thing ever, Thandie Newton. But what I dislike is that they use the mission as a silent backdrop for, oh, so he's actually doing a mission, but the reality is that Tom Cruise wants to bang her, and that's literally all it is. Like, there's genuine a bit of stake. You know, there's a weapons dealer that's going to get some
Chimera.
weapons.
Yeah,
It's a deadly virus. It's pretty nasty, but. No, you know what? I'm gonna save the girl. I can sort it all out. I'm gonna save her. I don't mind it. I can like it in action, but I think with this, I just wasn't prepared. I'd heard everyone say, "Two's crap. Avoid 2. Don't like 2." I heard that so much. I was like, you know, I'll go into it, but I kind of got on the wrong side because no one had warned me. You're right. If I'd have known it was an action film, then I'd have been alright. But I think it was too much. It was the slow mo, like left, right, and centre. There was like 5 repeat shots, doves everywhere. And it's just, I really didn't like it. And I just wanted it to finish so I could go to sleep.
and you know what the best thing is, that when we finish this recording, Mission Impossible 2's on, like, around about now, so I might catch the third act of it. But I'm glad you brought up the slow-mo. Yeah, this was going to be a point I was going to bring up. If you think that Zack Snyder is bad using slow-mo in films like 300 or Watchmen, oh boy, like, just John Woo puts him to shame. Blatant overuse of slow-mo in this film. If you took the slow-mo shots and put them in real time, this movie would probably be over in an hour. Like, there's that many, and you're right, every single shot is multiple camera angles, like soft sort of Spanish flamenco acoustic music drifting over it in the slow-mo shots. It's great, and the scene that comes to mind of that is, I won't even say it's a car chase, but it's where Tom Cruise is speeding after Thandie Newton's character, and it's almost like the 2 cars are dancing over the cliff top. So you get that scene. And another thing with the action in it, because it's like that, I mean, this is how cliched it is. You even get a shot of Tom Cruise obviously holding two guns because this is a John Woo film and you have to, running through a flock of doves in slow motion, shooting the guns. Like it's that level of cliche. Like it's just typical John Woo, but that's why I love it.
Yeah, I'll go with there is one or two bits I like. I think the general gist of it, I've literally the past minute just realised everyone that loves Transformers hates the
Yeah.
films, but I'm this minority that likes both, and that's because I like Michael Bay. He's arguably like
Oh
you know
man.
I just find films enjoyable. I think this is what the hitting wall is for me. I don't care about Transformers enough, or it's because I really enjoy spy
Yeah.
films. Seeing it, I've literally just a minute understood the Michael Bay
This is the
hate,
equivalent.
so I can understand. But then again, it's kind of flip on its head. If this is a Transformers review, you're hating it and I'm loving it. So I'm starting to get the gist of it. I know it's totally irrelevant, but it's actually kind of
There's no
cool.
scene in this one of Ving Rhames being completely racist or any dogs humping anything. So there is that. So there is that kind of difference. It's much more focused, and the action is definitely a lot better shot, I think. But I can see that comparison.
But there is Tom Cruise kicking sand and a gun flying
Yes.
up at a perfect vertical angle for him to turn around. Oh yeah, I guess right in slow motion
Yes.
and shoot at the Scottish guy.
Yeah, but that scene's amazing. That whole end fight, like it feels brutal. I don't know if you've ever played the Metal Gear Solid franchise, but in Metal Gear Solid 4, the final boss fight, it's literally like a 15-minute long straight just punching each other. And that's what it reminded me of the ending of this. It's so brutal and like the sound effects and the slow motion, it's like you feel the impact behind every single punch, kick, whatever. And that whole like gun kick from the sand was just sort of the icing on the cake of that third act for me. we'll leave it at that then for the action scenes. But yeah,
Um, if you want to talk about now, this is something anyone that listens knows I'm a massive
yeah.
Hans Zimmer fan. I did not know that Hans Zimmer did this soundtrack until you told me 20
I'm
minutes
so
ago.
surprised by that. Like I got, like it was halfway through the movie, and I can't remember which bit of the movie it was exactly, but there was a music cue in it, and it sounded exactly like The Dark Knight, the sort of background music as it like drifts over the city of Gotham, and I was like, that sounds like Hans Zimmer. Like, has Hans Zimmer like ripped off this music? And a quick Wikipedia search later, Hans Zimmer did the soundtrack. I'm like, oh, surprise, surprise! And then throughout the soundtrack, I started to pick up on it more and listen to it more, and you can definitely see where he's either reused cues, note for note in this case from Dark Knight, um, and then there's other bits where like the choral voice kicks in, and I was like, that sounds like Gladiator. Wikipedia search: Lisa Gerrard did the vocals for it, and she obviously did the vocals for Gladiator. And I believe this came out the same year as Gladiator, didn't it? Gladiator came out 2000.
Yeah, it's safe to say which film Hans Zimmer was a
Yeah,
better.
oh, definitely. Gladiator's fantastic, but I do really like the soundtrack to this. Actually, it does get very epic. It is very noticeably Hans Zimmer, as I said. There's elements of Pirates of the Caribbean in there as well, stuff like that. And there's one scene in particular where, to me, the soundtrack really kicks in full force, and it's a super cheesy moment. It's right where Thandie Newton's injected herself with Chimera, and Tom Cruise, she's like saying, shoot me to get rid of it. And he's like, I'm going to come back for you. I'm going to save you. And like the soundtrack's just ramping up. It's so needlessly epic. And then he just shoots some like C4 by the window and just dives out the window. And right there, I just sort of like threw my arms up in the air and I was like, this film has like gone from okay. Because I will say, like, for the first 45 minutes or so, I really wasn't digging this movie, and then the last hour just gets insane. So that's why I like it. You've got Tom Cruise just sliding on the floor in slow motion on his side, firing two guns at the same time, and it really reminded me again, John Woo. There was a PS3 game that came out years and years ago called Stranglehold, and that game is basically the last hour of this movie. And then there's like a bike chase as well, with loads of repeat shots and slow mo, and I could just go on all day about this movie. Really massively surprised by this film. Negatives, sort of my overall opinions now, I completely buy everything you say and understand everything you have problems with. It's not a Mission Impossible film. It does away with all the spy stuff and everything like that. This message will self destruct in 5 seconds. All that's just gone. It's just turn your brain off, watch it. Tom Cruise in a kick-ass action movie directed by John Woo, music by Hans Zimmer. Sit back, enjoy it. That's really my review of this movie.
Um, for a franchise for a franchise to rise, it has to get to its lowest.
Oh, come on.
And I'd much rather take the lowest, and then we're going to get to the highest for the next two, potentially three
Oh,
films.
come on. This is better than 3, but okay.
There are two good things. One of them is Tom Cruise. The second one is Maskception,
Yeah.
which is still bad.
I like that. Hashtag that. Maskception. But yeah, now we'll get on to Mission Impossible 3, which came out 6 years after that. 2006, we get this, directed by J.J. Abrams, and I believe you said this was his directorial debut, didn't you say? Yeah, it was.
Yep.
Oh, great. I didn't know that. So yeah, this picks up Ethan Hunt. He's getting married, sort of settling down now. He's put the whole life of being an agent behind. Also, we think he's still picking up like odd jobs and stuff behind her back. He's trying to keep her safe. And we have a new villain rise up. I forgot his name. I'm just going to refer to him throughout this review probably as Philip Seymour Hoffman, who is, for me, the best goddamn thing in this movie. He gets caught up with all this, puts his wife in danger, and that's the mission basically. Stop him from detonating a bomb called the Rabbit's Foot. So yeah, this was sort of a reboot of the series, I guess. Definitely more modern. This is like people would say that 4 might be a reboot, but this was definitely the seeds of that planted, I think. This is a much more sleeker, fast-paced, frenetic Mission Impossible that we're probably used to now. Brings the whole spy angle back, I would say, but it does have quite a lot of action in it.
Yeah, I think with this one, I mentioned that you've got to get to the bottom to get to the top. With this, I call it the kind of partial reboot where they're basically forgetting goodbye 1 and 2.
Mhm.
This is the wife. So you get this killer opening scene, which we'll talk about later on. But I think with this, you're right about the action spy stuff. There's more spy stuff than there was. It kind of begins small and stuff, but then when it hits the action, it can be big. And there's 1 or 2 bits which is a bit too much for me. You'll go on to say they're extended because I understand that as well, that some of it's too long. But when they get some of the things right, and what I enjoy about it, we'll go into it more when we talk about it, but for J.J. Abrams' solid film, it's a solid, I like it, I really, really enjoyed this. But for a directorial debut, he stamps his authority on it very much, which I find incredible because you'd think this would be a studio film rather than his. And it kind of it sets the tone, you get a bit of a lens flare, all that kind of stuff, but some of the action stuff just felt a bit unnecessary, but then some of it felt like the J.J. Abrams action films you see in Star Trek and arguably Star Wars, which was kind of cool going forwards because, again, it's more research into knowing what we're going to get, and I really do think he's kind of becoming the master of the reboot.
Definitely, but what I will say is out of all 4, I know we disagreed massively on 2. This is probably my least favourite one of the series, and that's not to say it's awful. It's not a bad movie. I just think out of all 4 of them that we've seen so far, obviously I can't comment on 5 yet, this is probably the most forgettable one out of all 4 of them. The action, you're right, for me, I really didn't care for the action in this scene. There's a scene pretty close to the start, actually. He's sort of breaking into this place to rescue an agent he was training up who's been captured. And they've got like all guns trained on the building, so you have this big overlong gunfight in the building. It's very actiony. It's not sort of the stealth aspect we're used to with Mission Impossible. Well, only with the first one, really. So it kind of did away with all that, and it still seemed very much like 2 very run-in, all guns blazing, shoot, shoot, shoot. And then straight after that, we're in like helicopters. Then there's like another 5-minute, 10-minute helicopter chase, and it's like we've just had an action scene. Save it a bit. We need like the time to calm down. This is like my problem with most films. Like if you want to bring up another Transformers reference, the whole last like 45 minutes is one long action sequence, and it's too much. And to me, this was drifting into the territory of this is too much. You need like a little small action beat towards this bit, that's fine, but it did go on a bit too long. And another thing that has made me slightly concerned about Star Wars Episode 7 with J.J. Abrams, but again, this was his directorial debut, and I think that he's quietened down, especially after seeing the Star Trek movies. The whole action scenes in this film is very much shaky cam heavy. There were a lot of shots in this where I really struggled to see what the hell was going on. It's very much close shot of the camera right in the actor's face, just shaking it around because something action-packed's happening. And it did get really disorientating, and I think with four, that is how four is shot with its action scenes. That's perfect because it pulls back. You get to take in the scope of it. You can see everything that's going on. To me, this did get very sort of Michael Bay Transformers heavy, where it's all the camera's frenetic and you can't really focus on what's going on.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point on that. But what I want to quickly say is there's this scene in Shanghai where they're doing some random science stuff. They're basically gearing up one of the first. We talk about the upgrades and the
Mm.
stunts. There's a scene when Tom Cruise swings around a skyscraper, and he has to like let go at the perfect
Yeah.
time and do all that sort of stuff. And it's really cool because I think when you bring it to the table, this felt like something J.J. Abrams would want to do.
Mm.
He's kind of sensed that it's going to get bigger and better. I think he knows because he wrote it as well, and I think the dialogue is very very good. You know what you're going to get of his films, and he has a very good sense. I believe did he write Lost as well?
Yeah.
The start of
He
it.
sort of, I don't know if he directed most of Lost, but he did like the first two episodes and he kind of set the stones for it. Yeah.
So I think that was just before this as well.
Yeah.
I think wasn't it when Lost
Lost
started?
kicked off in about 2004. So, yeah, 2 years before this.
So he probably had good gravitas going into this, and I think with this, what this is, it kind of brings it down. I know you say the action's a bit too much, but I think this is where we start to disagree because when it doesn't do the action, it's so well. I think in all honesty, there's only three action set pieces, and you're right, they're a bit long. But when you don't have that, when they set up Ethan Hunt with the marriage, it's really cool how they do it. The fact that they're trying something new. You're never going to see James
Mm.
Bond, except in one film. You're never going to see him be married or anything like that. The fact they kickstarted like that. But then you get this kick-ass opening scene with Philip Seymour Hoffman, where it's one of the final scenes of the film, but straight away you are listening, you are tense, you want to know what happens, and that kind of burdens you out the whole film. You want to know how you're going to get to that moment. I think is really strong, and I think it does increase the stakes, although it's arguably on a smaller scale, similar to two, where it's more about the woman. With this film, you get the connective to the woman. It's actually it's his future wife. He cares about her. It's believable when they're together. You kind of want Tom Cruise to do well, or Ethan Hunt to do well. Whereas I think with some of the odd ones, it's kind of like, oh, there's just this woman he likes.
Yeah, and I guess it was sort of a natural progression for his character, and I do like when spy things try to do this. We saw this with Skyfall as well. They're very much trying to humanize him and give him an actual character to like behind all the action and stuff. Um, and really, the theme of it is sort of, and this plays more into four, that this lifestyle can't work. Like you can't have it both. Either you are the agent or you're the family man. Like, and he tries to have both, and he finds out really that you can't do that. But if we're gonna get into favourite scenes, then like you was referring to a scene there, it's gotta be that opener you were just talking about. It's like wow, like you warned me before. You said the opening scene of the film is the best bit of the film. And right there, like I'd heard that Philip Seymour Hoffman played a really awesome bad guy in this movie, and man, there aren't words to describe his performance in this film. He carries this film for me. He's absolute film stealer with this one. Probably my favourite performance I've seen him in. I haven't seen him in all that much stuff, I will be honest, but in this, he's great. And you're right, it's intense. Like you believe it, and he's got like the gun pointed to her head. It's like it might be a cliche at this point. Like I'm gonna count to 10, then I'm gonna pull the trigger unless you tell me what I want to hear. But the acting from both him and Cruise in that scene, both fantastic. And right there from the start, like you hear a gunshot and then it cuts to the opening credits with the opening theme. But right there, you kind of know that she won't be dead because like where you're going to go from that scene afterwards. So right there, I knew that she was still going to be alive, and that's a problem as well that I kind of had with this movie. I don't know if it's a massive problem, but for me, it was very predictable. Like we hear that there's a guy sort of in the what would you call it, like the headquarters. Like Tom Cruise's boss is basically Laurence Fishburne in this movie. He's a great character. I love his character in this one. And then there's this other agent in it. I'm forgetting his name, but he's played by Billy Crudup, I think his name is. And right there, when they kept saying Laurence Fishburne's the bad guy, I'm like, no, it's not going to be him because that's too obvious. Like the person they're saying it is not who it's going to turn out to be. And I immediately knew it was going to be Billy Crudup. And then when he emerged from the darkness at the end, I was just like, oh, well, I kind of predicted that. And that was a problem. Like with four, stuff was happening. Like I did not know what was going to happen. Like I was just so like on board for four. This one I did find a little bit predictable.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think going back to the Philip
Mm,
Seymour Hoffman stuff you were saying, it is
mm,
so good that opening scene. But what I like, we talk about this very briefly. We talk about the mask being too much in the second film. In this, they use, I think they use it 2 or 3 times, like most Mission Impossible films. But we see it getting created, and we see how they get the voice chip, which is ridiculously done in the second film, where Tom Cruise is suddenly South African and not even the chappy South African
mm.
accent. Um, he's got to make him say the whole line, and then you kind of got Philip Seymour Hoffman who says it, but when he captures him, it's all good, good. He's like, I'm gonna kill you in front of your wife. He's like, I'm gonna cause a same. He's so intense, and you just believe everything he does. And it's the fact that when it cuts to the opening scene, you already know you're gonna get his wife. So every threat he says, you can believe it. And I can understand what you're saying, but it's a bit of a negative that that's happening in comparison to the fourth film, but I think it works in his favour because he's already got the credibility as a villain when you think he's murdered the wife, but actually he's murdering one of his henchmen who cocked up in a meeting.
Yeah, and with that sort of like moving on from that, like with the character of Laurence Fishburne, um, with him, I was really disappointed he didn't come back in four because I really enjoyed his character, and to me, I don't know if you've ever seen Beverly Hills Cop. But sort of Axel Foley's boss in that, he reminded me of that, like very shouty and sort of like the wisecracking boss.
I haven't seen it now.
No, well, it's a shame because I thought they, like you said, this was the reboot and stuff, like moving into the next one. I thought like all the characters that appeared in this, and this is our first one we see Simon Pegg in as well. Like he gets a little bit of a role, he gets more to do in the fourth one. But I would have really liked to see Laurence Fishburne in the next one. I don't know, I just loved his character.
Yeah, it kind of suited like that way. You'd think when John Voight was in the first one, he's the high up
Mm.
guy. You think, oh, John Voight, big name, fair play. Second one, you have Anthony Hopkins for like 2 scenes,
Yeah, it's a shame
so
he
you got
didn't come back.
credibility.
To be fair.
Yeah, I think with him, he'd probably decide the second one because he's very touchy,
Mm.
especially if Marvel stuff he gets
Yeah.
weird. Laurence Fishburne is kind of the high up guy. Now that I've seen the first three, I expected the character. I forgot the name of the actor, one that's Falcone from Batman
Oh
Begins.
yeah, I can't remember his name either. He's always
Um,
Falcone to me as well.
exactly. He's done a lot of stuff, but sorry, I forgot your name now.
If you're listening.
If you take him out of four, we'll go into later. That could be Laurence Fishburne, and that give what the actions of that moment in four more
Mm.
credibility. It'd give the film more in itself. But we'll talk about that later. But I love four. Just before we
Yeah,
say it.
if I was going to give sort of like a negative to the series overall, it is the continuity between them. And I think that 4 to 5 will have much better continuity because 4 to me seems like the foundation one for moving forward with the series. Um, but yeah, like with 2 especially, like it seems like they went, oh yeah, 2 didn't happen. Like there's never any reference to Thandie Newton's character in 3. And I
Good.
was worried that they were going to do that with 4 as well, with the wife. Like she wasn't cropping up, and they just like in 4. We'll get into it in a bit, but there's like a sentence dropped in towards the start that they've broken up. I thought, oh, okay, well at least they've acknowledged it. So I guess that's my problem with the series overall is like the sort of it's more the supporting characters to be honest carrying over in the films. But if I was going to sort of close out with 3, we could talk about the music a bit. This brings in Giacchino. Obviously, he'd worked with J.J. Abrams before on Lost, and he scored all of Lost. Beautiful soundtracks on that. And again, we keep bigging Michael Giacchino up, it seems, in every review we do. But his music's great in this one, and we talked about this before with like Jurassic World and stuff like that. He's very good at taking original themes, weaving them into the soundtrack, but also creating his own soundtrack based around that style of music. And he does it again with this.
Yep, definitely. Michael Giacchino, he is the man. We've said it many times. This is I think it's the first film in the actual series where he actually threads it through, where it'll be this cool moment, and then you get a few beats of the theme.
Mm,
And I just like it, although it's the little things, it doesn't matter, but it kind of helps in the grand scheme of things that this is that theme.
mm.
And that's where he starts to stand out compared to the other composers. And only the best seem to do it, which is ironic because it's such a simple thing to do.
Yeah, and I think we'll close out with 3, just with our like we've already said favourite scenes really, but sort of overall opinions for me. This is worth watching just for Philip Seymour Hoffman alone. It's one of his standout performances. Favourite scene would definitely be the opening interrogation, but there's also a great scene with him later on where Ethan's threatening him in the plane, and he sort of opens the plane doors and like hangs him out, and it's awesome. Um, for me, it is the most forgettable one out of all of them, but it was definitely the first steps into the more modern Mission Impossible world. The action, there's plenty of action in it. Some of it which is a little bit overlong, but I think for a first directorial debut with J.J. Abrams, it was a solid effort. It definitely progresses the character of Ethan a lot more than any of the previous ones did, and I think it's a fine entry into the series, but in terms of like the spy stuff, it's still very much a far cry from one, because I still think that Mission Impossible 1 does that the best out of all of them.
I think total. If you're gonna watch these films, you've never seen any of them. Maybe give one or two a chance. But three's kind of that one where you're gonna be digging it. It's the foundations. It's laying it
Hmm.
all. It's very good. Philip Seymour Hoffman's fantastic. It's got a worthy villain. I'll say there's not really been a strong villain in
No,
any of the four films, and this really does it. And I don't think there's a villain in the fifth one. It's not really clear what
no.
the hell's
I think
happening in the
that's like
fifth
an
one.
organisation is the villain in the fifth one, really.
Exactly, it's like Spectre, but without a
Yeah.
villain. But yeah, Philip Seymour Hoffman, the late great, is one of his best performances to date. It's worth watching, and if you're doing your research for Star Wars, J.J. Abrams' directorial
Mm.
debut, you can see great things coming from this, especially in that
Oh, I
script.
hope so. And then we get on to our final one of this sort of Mission Impossible series breakdown. In 2011, we get Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, because they couldn't afford a number 4 for the title, clearly. This was directed by Brad Bird, which I actually didn't know. I watched this earlier today. This was obviously the last one I watched. I watched them all in order. And then the opening credits hit. It said a Brad Bird movie. I was like, oh, okay. Like I didn't know he directed it. I knew I was aware of Incredibles, Iron Giant, Tomorrowland. This one just completely dropped off the radar for me. I think it's because it's not really a genre he does. He's so been used to the animated world that it just didn't seem like a fit for me. But to me, like, take 2 out of the equation, okay? Two's not even a Mission Impossible movie. Two's just like a glorious action movie. So we're going to take that out of the series, set that aside. It's earned its place. But this one, I would say, in terms of scope, has the best action. And I think it's definitely the best shot action. I think that Brad Bird, for the series, was a better director than J.J. Abrams was. He seems to get it more, and he brings the team aspect back to it, which I really like. Like I think that was lacking a little bit in 3, but for me this is probably the most well-rounded one since the first.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. With this Brad Bird, I love the fact that he'd done so many animated. It was clearly a risk giving
Mm,
him a big franchise, b a live action cast, if you know what I mean. It hadn't been done, and a very big budget, especially. I don't want to say it, but the Iron Giant wasn't great, and unfortunately Tomorrowland wasn't. But Mission Impossible 4, I mean, you can see why he was given the money for Tomorrowland. He makes a fantastic
mm,
film, and with this, he brings back. He keeps the tone of 3. There's when there's action set pieces, there's it's not massive scale except maybe the Kremlin moment, which we'll go into in a
yeah.
bit. But I like the fact he keeps it smaller scale. We'll talk about the stunt in Dubai, but when we're talking about the spy stuff, you generally have this team of people that suddenly have to pretend to be others. They got to make sure this meeting happened, and they never meet. It sounds quite bizarre, but it's really cool, and it's kind of something that you'd expect to see from a James Bond film. And I quite like the way he does it, where he tries to keep it to a smaller scale, and it kind of works. But then you can add in your important stuff. It almost feels like for the first time he's got his whole plan, and then he adds in the stunts to do it all, rather than have the stunt design and what they're going to do in the film.
And I'll definitely agree with that. It does feel, I don't want to say small scale because there is like a massive action scene on the tallest building in the world later in the film, but whereas J.J. Abrams sort of opens up with that huge helicopter chase, yada yada yada, this film, it really paces its action well. I think like it starts off in the prison in Budapest, and for a Mission Impossible film, like that's a really small scale action scene. He just sort of goes in to like rescue someone from the prison, and then I'm trying to think now. I'm trying to go back through it. Like you get a little bit in Budapest, but that's more like the spy stuff. I think really your big action scene kicks in when you get to the Burj Dubai towards the end, and then from there it sort of ramps up after that really. And I think that's a good pace for it because I think the action suits Mission Impossible more in this one because it's still focused around the whole breaking in somewhere or the whole espionage stuff. So it fits more, I would say, than the action in 3 does. But inherently, it is a spy movie still. And that's why I think this one strikes the balance the best out of all of them.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. With some of the I know you talk about arguably the biggest action set pieces, the moments towards the
Mm,
end. I think I like the fact that in them moments, it is just Tom Cruise versus that bloke with the suitcase. It's not, and they're in a
mm,
car, but it's a cool location. It's a sort of spy location to expect that in a James Bond film. It's not the streets of China where there's billions of people watching. If you know what I
mm.
mean, I quite like the fact that they go for something big, but they keep on a smaller scale, and that's what Brad Bird does that separates it from the others. And I really believe that he got a great. It's a great piece of film.
Mm.
Sorry, that sounds weird. It's a great Mission Impossible film, and it's not really an. In all honesty, I'll just talk about them all generally
Mm.
here. They're not impossible missions, but it's a very cool name for them. But with this one, the fact that they're shut out on their own, it adds more to it all. He's got his squad, they've got their gadgets, they've got to do this and that. And the team dynamic plays really well. They introduced Jeremy
Mm.
Renner just before he's in the Avengers. It seems like he's having a good time. He doesn't really get a backstory, but he explains why he's not in the field anymore, which leads to a really awesome. There's not a lot of continuity, as you said, but when you get the wife moments at the
Yeah,
end,
and I loved that
that
because
was
I wasn't expecting that.
exactly. It was really, really well done, and it kind of doesn't make you like Renault in the sense that he's very likable and you kind of feel sorry for him, but it's the fact that they're kind of saying, yes, he's got the wife, but he can't be with her. This is a clever way around it, and it's the fact that they could get her in for that cameo, which just gives it so much more credibility rather than just dropping her out. And I really enjoyed that. And as you said, this is laying the foundations for the new one. They've got the whole of the I think team back for this except Paula Patton.
Mm.
They've got Jeremy Renner for the fifth. We'll go into obviously next week. Simon Pegg, I love in this. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Cornetto trilogy, as I've said
Mm.
before, and seeing him starting to get his American success, I'm loving it because he's a great guy. He's into all the cool stuff. He's very geeky and he's a good writer. And in this, he perfectly suits. He's playing the cue of the team, and he's so good at it.
Yeah, and as I said, like Simon Pegg was in the third one only briefly though, and I like that he gets more to do in this. He's still very much the comic relief, but that's what you really want for him. But he still does a lot of stuff into it. If I'm going to talk about the team aspect for it a bit, it's weird. Like I got to the end of the film where Ving Rhames gets his cameo, and then I just went like, "Oh shit, Ving Rhames wasn't in this movie. Like he's been in all the other three." And he wasn't in this one, but I think that speaks to the credit of the film that the new characters they bring in still carried the film to the point where I didn't realise he wasn't in there. And with Jeremy Renner, like I'll go on record and say that although I haven't seen much of his work, he's never really stood out to me as a compelling actor. He always seems to me he seems like he has that Daniel Craig aspect to him. He sort of like sleepwalks through the role, like he's just not very charismatic, not very likable, really. I mean, you look at Avengers, and it's like the classic trope of those movies is that why is Hawkeye here? Like he's useless. And I've seen the Bourne films, but I didn't see the latest one, which I think was Bourne Legacy, where he took over from Matt Damon. But from the trailers, I got the same impression. But in this, I did find him very likable, and he does get some really funny stuff. And you're right, the backstory to bring a new character in like that, you do need some kind of backstory, so like you can ease them into the franchise. And I really did like that because when at the start when they mentioned the wife, where it was just like, oh yeah, they broke up. I was like, oh really? Like they seemed like they were really in love in the third one. You're just gonna kind of drop that, but I was with it. And then you're right, that cameo at the end, it was a really nice cap off to the series, nice sort of closure to their relationship and the character of Ethan as well. And now that means now that you've got that scene in there, 5 onwards, you can do whatever you want now. Like that was sort of the baggage the film had from 3, but they've paid it off in such a good way. And it does suck about Paula Patton not being in the next one. I really enjoyed her character, and she gets a great backstory as well. In that one of the villains played by, it's a French name, Leah Seydoux, I think.
Just say the new
The
Bond
new
girl.
Bond
That's
girl.
good
Yeah,
enough.
I didn't realise she was going to be in the new Bond film. That's great. She killed. It's sort of like three. Like she killed an agent that Paula Patton's character was training up, played by Josh Holloway, who, if we got any Lost fans listening, played the character of Sawyer in Lost. He's one of the main characters. He's my favourite character in Lost. When I saw his name in the opening credits, I was so excited. And he gets killed in the first scene. He gets a little scene later on, which is like a flashback scene, and then yeah, he's like killed straight away. And it's a real shame because Josh Holloway, I think, is a brilliant actor, and I'd love to see him in more stuff. He hasn't really done much since Lost. Um, so she's really out for revenge against this agent that killed him. And this all culminates in our final action scene, if we move into the action now, at Burj Dubai. So both Jeremy Renner and Paula Patton's character both have these backstories, and they just work for the characters. Like they're really good characters. They introduce them well. And going back to Simon Pegg, like we talk about him being the comic relief, that bit where they're in the Kremlin and it's completely ridiculous, but it's awesome how they do it. They set up like this projector screen in like a corridor, and they program it so that it like superimposes the image of the rest of the corridor onto it, so they can sneak around. And he like sticks his head in front of the camera, and like for a split second, like his face is just the corridor. And it's little moments like that. Like I'm not a massive Simon Pegg in that I haven't seen the Cornetto trilogy, for example, so I don't really have a good sense of his like comedy. But I thought he was brilliant in this.
Yeah, and I think with that moment, I was saying to you earlier that it feels like a sort of not as like a nasty thing to say, but felt very much like a sort of animated joke. If you
Yeah.
know what I mean. Like without the animated films, I couldn't have seen that happening. Also, while it's on my mind, the A113, which is a Brad Bird slash Pixar thing, I recognised if I happened to Google it. The location Tom Cruise gives when he's walking in the hoodie is Alpha 113.
Oh, really? Oh, I completely missed that because obviously I just look out for that in the Pixar movies. Like I didn't realise that he'd carry it over in this.
No, well, I knew it's in a lot of things, and then I think because we literally just reviewed Inside Out, it
Yeah.
was in my head all morning that it was, it's like subconsciously there. It's like A113. I was like, oh shit, it's pretty cool
Oh,
though.
now I want like Mission Impossible to like take place in the same continuity as all the Pixar movies. Add this to the Pixar theory. But yeah, we'll get into the action now if you want. Burj Dubai, the tallest building in the world. I knew it was coming. It's on the front cover of the Blu-ray. This is the scene everyone talks about in this film, and rightfully so. Wow. The fact that they got Tom Cruise and he was actually on the outside of that building doing this, and this really speaks to Tom Cruise as an actor. Like I always had like wrestled with the problem that like the whole Scientology thing, like he can believe whatever he wants to, but I didn't like him as a person, so it always kind of overshadowed that when I see him in films. But now, total respect for the man. He's great with his fans as well, and the fact that he willingly wants to do this, he does his own stunts, and we're gonna get another one in Rogue Nation. He's clinging onto the side of the plane, looks incredible. How this was shot, like how tense it was when he's got these like sort of suction gloves on, and then one breaks down. And to my knowledge, I don't think there's any soundtrack to this bit either. It's very indicative of the action scene of the coming down from the ceiling from the first movie, and it's so tense. And it's the bit where he slips off the building and he falls, and right there, I got like a sense of vertigo. Like I never got to see this on the big screen, but watching this scene would have been incredible, I think.
Yeah, and it's the moment where it's on the Blu-rays, it's on everything. You kind of think, are they milking it? How great is it going
Yeah,
to be? But it's so good. There's so much more to it. I mean, I remember the trailers episode. That was always the point of marketing, just like the airplane will be for the new one. But they're going to do so much more we don't know about, and it's the fact where he's moving that you kind of like, oh god, no. It's when he first whips his hand.
yeah.
Then you get the red light off one of the gloves, and you're like, oh my goodness. And it's just like flying away 130 floors down. Then he's there like holding on with one arm, and he's using the grip on the other, and it's so awesome. I mean Tom Cruise, he's a great guy. Like, I've always liked him. I never loved him until the past few years. I've really started seeing some of his film stuff, and he just lives for this. I mean, there's the picture of him on the top of it. He don't care. He's not even wearing shoes. He's just there on the tallest building in the world. But the film, and what I like most, is that it's not this over dramatic cliched thing. He kind of just does his
Mm.
job and gets to the top. But the build up to that scene is hilarious
Oh
because
yeah.
they're kind of like, we can't get in,
Yeah,
and
and
Tom Cruise is like, what? And it's just the little moments where Simon Pegg goes, "Well, I'm on the computer, I can't do it."
Jeremy Renner's like,
And then
I'm
there's
I'm just the helper, like I can't do it.
exactly, and then Tom Cruise is like, "Oh," and you know he's gonna
Yeah.
do it anyway. But it's just the little things like that. I think where I don't know if Brad Bird wrote part of it. I'm assuming he did because it felt very much like a sort of Brad Bird film, but it was really enjoyable, and they get the quips in perfectly. Not too much of it, not too little of it. But it keeps you invested and you like the characters. But the whole scene, and it's when he's building and the sandstorm comes, you're like, oh
Mm.
shit.
Yeah, and what else I will say is that the sandstorm bit did kind of go into the more ridiculous area, I think. Like, I don't know. Maybe Dubai does get sandstorms all the time like that, but it's very much like a sort of apocalyptic death cloud just encroaching on the city, like blotting out the sun as it comes past. Like, that did get a bit ridiculous for me, but it does make for a sweet car chase and like running through the city. Um, I'll just kind of close it with the Dubai stuff. And the bit you mentioned earlier where he has to make that swing, let go of the rope and free fall and land in the window frame. That was brilliant, and it really reminded me for some reason of Batman Begins, where Ra's al Ghul and Bruce Wayne are sliding down that icy slope, and he just catches him before he falls off. Like I got that like rush from it and that sense from it. I love that scene in Batman Begins, and it was perfect in this. And then after that, like everything else that's taking place in the room, where they've sort of got this double transaction going, and you've got Paul Patton's character who's listening in on the earpiece. You've got Jeremy Renner who's having to like take pictures of the launch codes, and he has to blink twice, and then the villain picks up on this. Then you get a fist fight with Paula Patton and the chick who's going to be the new Bond girl gets kicked out the window. We knew someone was going to go out that window. And then just when you think the action couldn't get any better, you get the whole running through the sandstorm bit, the car chase and that stuff. And then, to me, what comes a very, very close second in this film for action is the whole bit in, I guess it's a car factory. I'm not even sure what it is, but I don't know how many effects were used in it, but to me it all looked real, or at least most of it. And it's just crazy. Like there's lifts carrying cars up, people are getting kicked off it, people are falling, people are getting kicked into stuff, crawling over cars, crawling under cars. It's insane. But again, how it's shot, I could see everything that was going on. I felt the impact between every shot thrown, and Brad Bird, I'd like to see him take on another action film or something like that because I think he's got the chops to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a shame of Tomorrowland that hasn't made as much money because I don't think it's a bad film. Like, it's nothing great. I don't want to wither on it,
Yeah.
but it's a film that it deserves to make its money back, I think, and maybe a bit more because we need to see more films like that. And I think Mission Impossible, whether Tomorrowland was a dream project or Disney asked him, he clearly put his best into it, just like he did in this, just like he's done his animated films. He'll give 200%. And while I'm thinking that's the same with Tom Cruise. It's very rare to see a guy be so buzzing. If you see any interviews, he's always buzzing for
Mm.
the films he does. Edge of Tomorrow, 200% in. Mission Impossible, 200%. He lives for it, and seeing things like this, it's great for the industry because it's so easy. I mean, look at Adam Sandler. There's pictures of him at the Pixels premiere, and he just doesn't even give a shit. He just like strolls through. Apparently, no smiling for pictures,
Mm.
nothing. And it's such a nasty thing to see films like that doing well. You've got films like this. Thankfully, this made its money back, but the people clearly care so much, and it's great when it pays off, which this one is. And they're now carrying on. The franchise is going great, and yeah, it's just nice, and I really enjoyed this film, and I'm happy that it was a success.
Yeah, and I'm not sure which film it was. It may have been three, but Tom Cruise is involved. I think he's got a production credit on it as well. So you can see, as you said, like how much love he's got for it, and he's great with the fans. He'll willingly do all these stunts. The guy's 54, hasn't aged a day since the 80s. I think I just keep making these films. He can do them. He clearly loves doing them, and it's really nice when an actor can be that genuinely enthusiastic in it. Like most of the times, like you'll see an actor just sort of like they do the job. They begrudgingly go to like all the press junkets and do all that stuff, and you can tell that like they don't give a shit about it. They're just doing it like for a job. But this, I think he really cares about it, and the fact that the series is like evolved and changed like for every film really. I think every film really has its own unique qualities to it, and you can like look at each one individually as we've done and sort of break down the bad things about each one of them. They are all very inherently different, I think, and it's just nice when you have a person in the lead role who is passionate about it, and I'm sure we're going to get that with Rogue Nation as well, just from what we've seen now with like the press and the premiere and the fact that he does that, clinging onto the side of a plane stunt, like not many actors would do that. They'd want a stunt double, or they'll put it in computer graphics, whatever. But the fact that he just does that speaks a lot to Tom Cruise and just like the whole production company and the direction, really.
Yeah, definitely, and it's a credit to the fact that he does that. I mean, it's also a shame that stuntmen don't get any recognition. So, I like the fact that Tom Cruise is doing these stunts, and you're now getting people going, "Wow, the men who would be doing this, the fact that they do anything like it, no one hears of it." I like the fact that Tom Cruise is doing this. It's a slap in the face to CGI. I do like CGI. I'm all for it. But when you can do something in reality,
Do
you
it.
can do that, and it's lazy if you don't. And that's what I think Tom Cruise's message of him doing his stunts, and he's having the time of his life.
It might be wishful thinking, but if we're going to go on like a really tangent before we close out with this, we saw it with the new Mad Max Fury Road. Like that was 80% practical or something like that, wasn't it? We're seeing it with these, and we're going to get it with Star Wars as well. I'm hoping that audiences are going to be sort of more privy to this, that practical effects are better, and it seems like I mean, Tom Cruise has even said as well, I think it was today or yesterday, about news of like where the Top Gun 2's happening, and he said that he'll come back for it if every single plane stunt in that movie is done real and doesn't use CGI like the first one did, like the same as the first one without any effects. So I'm hoping this is going to sort of make audiences aware of the difference, and they're going to gravitate more towards that, and we'll see a difference. But we'll have to wait and see. I think it works better in the action films because you just get that sense of that scope, like wow, this is done real, and you have that awe to it.
Definitely. And I think, speaking of that, we mentioned audiences received a better Mad Max
Oh
my
yeah.
film of the year. A lot of people's films of the year. Unexpected as how Mission Impossible 5, I didn't go into the year saying this is going to be my favourite of the year. I don't even know it was on my top 10 list. It's a shame. I just completely forgot about it. Especially as it was originally slated for December, the new one. I will say the fact that it's been done 5 months early is a credit to all of them. That's a lot of extra pressure they had. Right now, I'm looking. It's got 90% the fifth one on Rotten Tomatoes, and again, with the stunts, audiences like it more. Clearly, critics do well, and that means it's probably going to be a good film.
Yeah, and I hope so. Like, I think we'll just sort of end on like our thoughts in general, really, just like the franchise overall, whether we'd recommend it. I think seeing it for the first time, I would definitely recommend it if you're into like action and spy stuff. You've probably seen it already, but yeah, I had a good time with these films. I don't know how often I'll dip back and watch them a second time. As I say, the whole action spy thriller sort of films aren't really my style, but for what they are, I really enjoyed them. My favourite ones, Ghost Protocol, fantastic movie, and as I've said with 2, it's not really in tone with the other Mission Impossible films, but if you like just a good action film, lots of slow-mo, lots of shooting, watch that and look at it as its own thing. But I think it's definitely one of the strong contenders, and if you were going to make a sort of a Mount Rushmore of the greatest like spy films, it's definitely up there with like Bond or the Bourne, for something like that. Would highly recommend, and try and get them all watched before you see the new one.
Oh, certainly. Tom Cruise is arguably the biggest star of all time. This is his franchise. Every leading man's got one. They are great fun. Even 2, I dislike 2. A lot of people dislike 2. You might like it. It's still one you're gonna watch if you're gonna go through them, but they do get better as they go along, and that's the strength. And some of these stunts are just breathtaking. Try and see them on the biggest screens you can get. And for the new one, I'm really hoping it's great. I think it will be. It's a great franchise, and I'd rather see things like these live on than stuff like Transformers.
Oh, definitely. And so yeah, that was our rundown of the 4 Mission Impossible films in anticipation for Rogue Nation. That'll be our main show Monday. You can find us at Facebook at facebook.com/cinemasavvy, on Twitter at cinema_savvy, as well as Letterboxd at cinema_savvy. We're working on getting back on iTunes as well, so we can get the podcast up there. We're on SoundCloud at the minute, but I'll post a link on our main show once we've got the back catalogue of all of our reviews up on there. So keep an eye out for that. Make sure you check our film club review out on Thursday. We're going to be reviewing Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. That was your pick from the main show this week. And as I say, come back Monday. We'll have our review up of Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. So until then, thanks very much for listening.